Hi. The Secure Act that was passed at the end of December is possibly one of the most significant pieces of retirement legislation we've seen come out of DC for a very long time. And if you're in retirement or approaching retirement, we think there are four provisions that you should really be aware of that could have impacts on your retirement income planning strategies. Hi, I'm Kevin Gaines with American Financial Management Group, AFMG, and want to talk to you about the Secure Act. So as I said in introduction, four provisions that probably you should really be aware of. The first one is the changing of the start date for your required minimum distributions. Up through 2019, it was 70 and a half. Starting this year, the start age is now 72, which means you now have up to 2 years, depending on how your birthday fell, for you to put off taking required minimum distribute RMDs if you don't want to or don't need to. The one caveat you definitely need to be aware of is if you were already 70 and a half by 12/31/2019, you still fall under the old rule. You have to start taking your RMDs, and you do not get to take a break between, say, 70 and a half, for your 71st birthday year. You don't get to skip that RMD. You're either under the 70 and a half rule or you're under the 72 rule. The second provision that you should be aware of is you're now allowed to contribute to a traditional IRA even after you've started taking your RMDs. Up until this year, you can still contribute to a 401k if you're working, or a Roth IRA, or retirement accounts along those lines, but you could not contribute to a traditional IRA. Congress has now said, you know what, we allowed for everything else, we might as well do it for a traditional as well. So if you do have earned income, and especially if you do not have access to a retirement plan, an employer retirement plan, a traditional IRA is now an option for you to be able to put some money to save a little bit more money. It also brings into play backdoor Roth conversions, which is a technique fully endorsed by the IRS. They've even explicitly talked about it in conferences and such, in which you make a non-deductible contribution into your traditional IRA and then convert it into a Roth. There's a few things to be aware of as far as rules for combining retirement accounts and how the money is calculated to figure out if there is any tax due. So it's not a very simple, this is what I want to do, I can do it. So definitely do a little research or reach out to someone who can help you execute that without incurring extra taxes that you don't want to be paying. Third provision is one you're not going to hear a lot about, even if you have heard stuff about the Secure Act, which frankly has been very underreported, I believe, among the main media. You hear it a lot in the business conversations, and with our industry, it's a big conversation. But you don't hear a whole lot of it on the 6 o'clock news, for example. But they have now mandated that if you are a long-term part-time employee, and by long-term they mean 3 consecutive years of at least 500 hours per year that you work, you now have to be included in your employer's retirement plan if they offer one. A lot of people, once they retire, they do get part-time jobs. So now there is another avenue for you to be able to save even more money to help you stretch out, especially to take care of or address the longevity risk. There's a big concern, many of you have this, of what if I live longer than I planned between medicine and basically just, the lifestyle, it's not unusual to see people live to be 100, 105. And, if you had initially planned, well, I'll probably die late 80s, early 90s, an extra 10 years could have a significant impact. So, part of the advantages of this part-time employee rule, and it, as well as using the traditional IRA to make contributions as well, it's a way for you to possibly stretch some of your savings longer. Speaking of stretch, the stretch IRA is done. Stretch IRA was the concept that, or the rules that said, when somebody dies and you inherit their retirement account, you can use their life expectancy, your own life expectancy, to calculate your RMDs. Well, if you inherit one and you're already in your late 60s or 70s, okay, not a big deal, but still better than having to use the numbers for somebody in their 80s or 90s. It was a real big deal for people who inherited when they were in their teens, 20s, or even 30s, because you could be looking at 60, 70, 80 years of distributions. And frankly, the government wants to get their money as quick as possible. So they said, let's get rid of that. There's now a 10-year rule. Unless you're one of 5 special classifications, you now have any IRA or retirement account you inherit starting in 2020. If you already have it, doesn't apply to you. But starting in 2020, you now have to take this money within 10 years. Now, one of the changes they made, part of this is under the 10-year rule, you do not have a required minimum distribution. You can choose to take no money years 1 through 9, and then you have to take all of it at the end of year 10. This, for existing retirement account owners, this is a provision you need to be careful of, because frankly, you don't care that they can't do the stretch anymore. You're dead. You're not taking the money. It doesn't impact you specifically. But a lot of people have gone through time and expense to create a very robust estate plan that includes using trusts to act as conduits for their retirement assets. Well, a lot of these trusts are going to have language saying, only going to distribute the RMD amount or something revolving around that number. That number doesn't exist anymore. So even if you continue to want to use a trust as the beneficiary as a conduit for your beneficiaries, you definitely want to talk to your estate attorneys to revisit to see if that language needs to be revamped, just so you're not dealing with large lump sums if that's not what people want to be able to do. So definitely want to be careful on that front. And the other thing that's going to impact some people is some of us who are older looking into collecting our own retirement income still have parents, and if they have retirement accounts, now you have to plan for this situation where you're going to have to take the money. When you inherit it, you're going to have to take that money within 10 years, and that can have impacts on taxability of your Social Security benefits. It can also have impact on your Medicare surcharge. Medicare premiums will increase if you make over X amount of dollars, different tiers, and they change a little bit each year. So you definitely want to be aware of what could come to you, and maybe have conversations with your parents about changing the beneficiaries if that's something you want to look into. And then the fallback provision is you're still allowed to disclaim an inherited IRA, which means even though you're listed as the beneficiary, if there's a contingent beneficiary, you can say, I don't want this IRA, just let it go straight to the contingents, and they can deal with the headache. frankly. But these are the, like I said, the four, but there's other provisions, and some will impact you as well, in special, certain circumstances. But generally speaking, these are probably the four biggest uh, provisions that will impact your day-to-day retirement. So, Kevin Gaines, AFMG, if you have any questions, please reach out to us, add a comment down below. We will, I will be monitoring and will respond and get back and help you however I can. So thank you. Have a good day.